Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening. Continuing with the Gateless barrier, case 35. Wuzu, which is the true Qian? Wuzu asked a monk, "There are two Qians. Which is the true Qian?" Wu Man says, "If you realize the true one, then you'll know that emerging from one husk and entering another is like putting up in one inn after another. If this is still not clear, don't rush about recklessly. When earth, water, fire, and wind disperse, you will be like a crab dropped into boiling water, breaking up into 7 hands and 8 legs. At that time, don't say I never told you." Wu Men's verse says, "The clouds and the moon are ever the same. Valleys and mountains are each different. All are blessed. All are blessed. It is one. They are two." Okay, 3 bells. So this is one of the cases in the Gateless barrier that if you just take the case as a Western person in 2016, you'll have no idea what the guy's talking about at all. So this case is based on an old Chinese kind of a ghost story. And there's a great... I don't know if you've seen the Stillwater, the Panda series of Zen children's books, Zen shorts and Zen ties, and I think it's called Zen Ghosts is the one that has this case in it. It's really well done. But I'm going to have to an hour time change. I didn't think it would screw me up that badly. I was downstairs and after the chanting, I went downstairs and I still hadn't put away the bed. Well, Nikki was in the bed, so I hadn't put away the bed and everything like that. And so I was sort of like, okay, so I've got to do that, and I start doing that, and I'm halfway done that, and I hear everyone come in, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Because usually I'm sitting by this point and previewing the case that I'm going to talk about, and I haven't even, the bed's not even away, and then the gong starts going, and Nikki's like, they're just going to keep ringing that till Yep. No, she's a good priest. He'll just keep ringing that till I show up. So you'll have to bear with me. So there's a really great story here. if I can find it here. Here we go. I'll have to do my reading. This is Robert Aitken's telling. So the story of the girl Qian. See, I have to look back and forth because of the different versions of Chinese rendition, is different. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Comment upon... Okay. There lived in Hanyang a man called Qian, whose child daughter Qian was of peerless beauty. He also had a nephew called Wang Chao, a very handsome boy. The children played together and were fond of each other. Once Qian jestingly said to his nephew, "Someday I will marry you to my little daughter." Both children remembered those words, and they believed themselves to be betrothed. When Qian grew up, a man of rank asked for her in marriage, and her father decided to comply with the demand. Qian was greatly troubled by this decision. As for Chao, he was so much angered and grieved that he resolved to leave home and go to another province. The next day he got a boat ready for his journey, and after sunset, without bidding farewell to anyone, he proceeded up the river. But in the middle of the night he was startled by a voice calling to him, "Wait! It is I!" And he saw a girl running along the bank towards the boat. It was Qian. Chao was unspeakably delighted. She sprang into the boat, and the lovers found their way safely to the province of Chu. In the province of Chu, they lived happily for 6 years, and they had 2 children. But Qian could not forget her parents and often longed to see them again. At last she said to her husband, "Because in former times I could not bear to break the promise made to you, I ran away with you and forsook my parents, although knowing that I owed them all possible duty and affection. Would it not now be well to try to obtain their forgiveness?" "Do not grieve yourself about that," said Chao. "We shall go to see them." He ordered a boat to be prepared, and a few days later he returned with his wife to Hanyang. According to custom in such cases, the husband first went to the house of Qian, leaving Qian alone in the boat. Qian welcomed his nephew with every sign of joy and said, "How much I have been longing to see you! I was often afraid that something had happened to you." Chao answered respectfully, "I am distressed by the undeserved kindness of your words. It is to beg your forgiveness that I have come." But Qian did not seem to understand. He asked, "To what matter do you refer?" "I feared," said Chao, "that you were angry with me for having run away with Qian. I took her with me to the province of Chu." "What Qian was that?" said Qian. "Your daughter, Qian," answered Chao, beginning to suspect his father-in-law of some malevolent design. "What are you talking about?" cried Qian, with every appearance of astonishment. "My daughter Qian has been sick in bed all these years, ever since the time when you went away." "Your daughter Qian," returned Chao, becoming angry, "has not been sick. She's been my wife for 6 years, and we have 2 children, and we have both returned to this place only to seek your pardon. Therefore, please do not mock us." For a moment the two looked at each other in silence. Then Qian arose and, motioning to his nephew to follow, led the way to an inner room where a sick girl was lying. And Chao, to his utter amazement, saw the face of Qian, beautiful, but strangely thin and pale. "She cannot speak," explained the old man, "but she can understand." And Qian said to her, laughingly, "Chao tells me that you ran away with him and that you gave him 2 children. The sick girl looked at Chao and smiled, but remained silent. "Now come with me to the river," said the bewildered visitor to his father-in-law, "for I can assure you, in spite of what I have seen in this house, that your daughter Qian is at this moment in my boat." They went to the river, and there, indeed, was the young wife waiting. And seeing her father, she bowed down before him and besought his pardon. Qian said to her, "If you really be my daughter, I have nothing but love for you. Yet though you seem to be my daughter, there is something which I cannot understand. Come with us to the house." So the three proceeded toward the house. As they neared it, they saw that the sick girl, who had not before left her bed for years, was coming to meet them, smiling as if much delighted. And the two Qians approached each other. But then, nobody could ever tell how, they suddenly melted into each other and became one body, one person, one Qian, even more beautiful than before, and showing no sign of sickness or of sorrow. Qian said to Chao, "Ever since the day of your going, my daughter was dumb, and most of the time like a person who had taken too much wine. Now I know that her spirit was absent." Qian herself said, "Really, I never knew that I was at home. I saw Chao going away in silent anger, and the same night I dreamed that I ran after his boat. But now I cannot tell which I really was, the I that went away in the boat, or the I that stayed home." So, we have this story now. So Wuzu asked a monk, "There are two Qians, the one who went and the one who stayed home. Which is the true Qian?" Wu Men says, "If you realize the true one, then you'll know that emerging from one husk and entering another is like putting up in one inn after another. If this is still not clear, don't rush about recklessly. When earth, water, fire, and wind disperse, you will be like a crab dropped into boiling water, breaking up into 7 hands and 8 legs. At that time, don't say I never told you." The verse is, "The clouds and the moon are ever the same. Valleys and mountains are each different. All are blessed. All are blessed. It is one. They are two." Okay, now I can start this. So this case, I think it's a very deep and sometimes difficult case to contemplate or to reflect upon in the context of our own lives. We spend a great deal of time in Zen talking about the self, the nature of self, and the fundamental emptiness of anything which is lasting or permanent or fixed. So this case, right from its beginning, right from even before the beginning in this very story, we have this question where even the person who's involved is really struggling with this idea of who am I? Which am I? If there was two of me, there was the me who was at home and sick with my parents, there was the me who was off and living with my childhood love, having a family. And I don't know which one of those is real or true, really me. And this sounds like a really kind of a fantastical story, and Maybe it is. But I certainly think that for all of us, I think to some degree we can certainly identify with Qian. Each of us, maybe every day of our lives, has multiple selves. I know that for me, the self that I am when I'm cleaning up and getting ready to do the Sunday Zendo, the me that's sitting in the seat giving the talk, the me that's going to the gym in the morning, the me that's dealing with my kids when, oh gosh, Keegan's doing the slack job of cleaning the bathroom or something like that. The me that's singing with a bunch of people getting ready for a play, the me that's snuggling in bed with my wife at the end of the day. Gosh, they're all different. And sometimes maybe I think it'd be funny to sort of like mix and match them. Like it would be so weird. But that's what I'm doing every day. I just, same husk, same shell, but there's a new me in each one. And I think everyone is like this. And sometimes, it's an important thing. It's a very important thing, I think, that we're able to make these kinds of transformations. In fact, I think some of the most difficult people that I've ever met in my life are people who are completely consistent from one circumstance to the next, people who aren't able to transform. Because, one of the things that I'm always, ever since, I remember a lesson I learned when I was working in group homes with teenagers, was they would always give out like fines for language, bad language. And I always thought this was really kind of stupid, right? Oh, let's fine them for bad language. But the director of the house said, it's not about them using bad language. It's about them not understanding appropriate circumstances. And this is something that I'm trying to teach with Keegan as well, because I don't expect that he goes out into the world and hangs out with all his 15, 16-year-old friends and never swears. That's ridiculous. But when we're at the dinner table and we're all as a family, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to wear certain things in certain times. And this is an important faculty that we develop. But and hopefully, so I hope that we all have some kind of experience with this, and we can all sort of think about ourselves and maybe say, like the person I am at work and the person I am at home, they're different. They're different masks. They're different transformations. And the question we might ask is, and certainly I think this is a question that I've asked lots of times, like the difference between the manifestation, the public manifestation of Eshu Osho and the private manifestation of Eshu dad or Eshu husband are really quite different. I can get away with a lot of stuff as Eshu Osho that my wife has no no tolerance for. She's not in the hierarchy. Well, maybe she is. So sometimes it's a lot of the time, I think, when I'm feeling really well balanced, I'm practicing lots, and I'm getting rest, and I'm well fed, and all that, everything's good. The transitions, I don't really think about it too much. So just smoothly moving from one thing to the next thing without too much of a ripple. But I think that for all of us, when we start to get a little bit stretched out, a little bit tired, a little bit hungry, a little bit edgy, sometimes we can really start to pine for the other me. If I'm feeling really sort of stretched out in my role as the abbot, I start to really feel like, oh God, I just want to transform into the other me. And sometimes after, I gotta say this quietly, sometimes after a couple of weeks of vacation with the whole family, I'm thinking, oh, I can't wait to put my robes back on. So which is the true me? So when you're going to work, and maybe you really love your job, or when you're going to play your music, or you're going to do your art, or you're going to, I don't know what else. Maybe you think, finally I get to shed this shell of making ends meet and doing all my necessary, unpleasant tasks of survival, and I get to go and be the real me. I get to go and do this real thing. And I think that this is where this koan is pointing, because I think we all attach, or we all fixate one aspect or one place or one idea of who it is that we truly are. And what this case is aimed at, I think, is really kind of questioning that assumption, or questioning that way of approaching our lives. Each circumstance that we're in, even if we have a whole bunch of different modes, different places for us to be in our lives, each circumstance that we're in is really the only circumstance we can be in. When I step out from the family and I come to the Zen center, my shell isn't left behind, laying in bed. Maybe we could say that there is a shell, there is a husk that's left behind in the minds and in the hearts of the people in my family. They hold a place for me. I'm not active in that husk. I'm just laying there unresponsive. Maybe I'm a pleasant husk that just smiles. And then the husk that has been sort of sitting very still in the zendo animates, and starts giving a talk, and everyone says, oh, there's Eshu, he's woken up. Maybe that's what happens. I go somewhere, anyways. What's important about this case is that we really investigate how we approach our moment-to-moment activities, our transformations, and that we recognize that in each transformation, there is nowhere else for us to be. And in truth, even when we transform, we go, I go from my family and I come into the zendo and I manifest as the abbot. When I go back to the family, it isn't even the old body that I'm manifesting, that I'm taking up. It's a whole new body. It's a whole new life. It's a whole new set of relationships and activities, and there's no way that I can go back to the way that things were. So, Wumen's comment, I remember this case really hitting me the first time I went through it, because I'm just going to read it one more time. If you realize the true one, Then you'll know that emerging from one husk and entering another is like putting up in one inn after another. And it's important that he uses the term inn. He doesn't use the term house or home. It doesn't give you the impression of it being a permanent, lasting sort of structure where you can stay indefinitely. These are inns, like a traveling salesman or a musician or something like that. Don't trash the hotel room, but each night, each transition, each moment, we're staying in accommodation that is temporary. It's a rental right from the beginning. And there's really no exceptions to this. Whether we think, I'm buying this and now it's mine and I own it. Everything from the property that we're staying in, the environment that we're staying in, the food that we're eating, the body that we have, it's all rentals. We have it for a little while, and then we move on, or it moves on. If this is still not clear, don't rush about recklessly. So, woman is, this is sort of the, just wait. There's another one where it says, if you don't get this, well, you can wait and ask Maitreya in the next kalpa. But this one's a little more immediate, and kind of, it sounds really gentle, and he does it in a very poetic kind of way, but he says, if this is still not clear, don't rush about recklessly. So he's like, I'm giving you this story and this lesson of everything being transient and every facet of your personality, each thing, even the one that you think is the real you, all of them are totally transient, and you can investigate this and you can see this and you can experience this for yourself. But if you don't, my saying it, if you don't get it, don't freak out. Don't try to rush around and see this. He says, when earth, water, fire, and wind disperse. So these are the four elements. This is 4-element theory in which every aspect of the cosmos is combined. It's a combination of one or more of these elements in combination. And I remember Sasaki Roshi talking about the difference. That's a big, long aside. I won't go there. But what happens, our science tends to be about, what happens when all of these elements combine in different combinations. A little bit of this, 2 parts water, 1 part fire, 2 parts wind, 1 part earth, and 1 part water. This is how everything is made up. And so the question becomes, what happens when all of these elements disperse? Each of our bodies is a composite of a whole bunch of these elements in different combinations. And what happens when they disperse? If we have all of these faculties of thought and a physical body and a circumstance and all of this kind of stuff, what happens when those energies that are sort of driving everything into combination exhaust themselves and disperse? Where do these yous, all of these yous, go? Where does this you that you think is the real you go? And so women here are saying, if this is still not clear, don't rush about recklessly. When earth, water, fire, and wind disperse, you will be like a crab dropped into boiling water, breaking up into 7 hands and 8 legs. So, if you don't understand, just wait, and you'll witness your own destruction. And honestly, I swear, I think 40 years old, I started to just see things starting to drop away. On my nose, I've got to go have a doctor check it out, because I think I've got this like minor skin cancer thing going on. Feel like a crab. At that time, don't say I never told you. Wu-Men is trying to spare us this rude awakening. This week past, I had an interview at Victoria Hospice Society. And it was a very interesting time for me to go back to the hospice. When I first came to Victoria, please make sure you're comfortable. When I first came to Victoria, and I had started practicing Zen, and I was reading a lot of Philip Kapleau. Last Tuesday, we went around the circle, and a number of people talked about how 3 Pillars of Zen was one of the big books that started people on their Zen journey. But Kapleau actually wrote several books, and several of them had a very strong component talking about the hospice movement. And so I really thought that would be really interesting. Death was always an area of really deep reflection for me, because I think a whole part of my spiritual journey really began with my own mother's death, and kind of my being locked out of the experience of that. She had a stroke, and she was in a coma in intensive care for like a week or two after the stroke. And at that time, I was 9, and children weren't allowed in intensive care units, and so I was not allowed to see her during that time. And so, anyways, when I first came to Victoria, I was sort of inspired by these readings I was doing, and so I went and took a course on being a volunteer at hospice, and followed that with a spiritual care volunteer course. And I was volunteering in the hospice while I was doing Zen, more sort of getting more involved in Zen practice. And one of the things that really motivated me to dig in more deeply to the formal Zen practice was the experience that I had of sort of really seeing two kind of groups of people who were coming into hospice or coming into the end of their lives. And one of those groups were people who had either through some spiritual tradition, spiritual practice, or just through philosophical self-reflection, personal contemplation, had sort of confronted the simple fact of their mortality at some point in their active lives. And so when they were sick, or when they were given a diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, and they had been signed up for hospice, it was kind of with comfort is not the word, ease is not the word, but it just a simplicity, where it was like there was an awareness that at some point this was going to happen, and now it has. And so I need to use the rest of my life, like the rest of the time that I've got is all that I've got, and I get that. So there's some things I need to do, and but most of all, I'm going to be aware of this process of breaking apart while it's happening. And early on, there was after I'd done the spiritual care course, one of the members of Zenwest, Victoria Zen Center at that time, Doreen was her name. She was in her 70s, I guess. And she had several bouts of lymphoma, and it had come back. And she said, That's it. She said, I'm not doing that again. She said, I've had a good long life and I've beat it like 3 times, so I'm satisfied. And so I had the experience of sort of walking beside her as she progressed through her illness and eventually died. And it was amazing, really powerful, how with it she was. And by with it, I don't mean necessarily cognitively with it, because there were times where she really wasn't, but she was really with the experience of dying. And watching her interact with her family and her loved ones and members of the Zen Center. And it was right at the time where we just got Dottie. And Dottie was a tiny pup. Well, she was a large puppy. And I remember taking Dottie over to meet Doreen. It's quite sweet. And so that was one side. And there were lots of different people who have that experience with, through various traditions. I remember there was an old Scottish guy who he had been in the military and all that kind of stuff. And I would go in and I was sort of like, what can I do for you? And he was like, he wanted to listen to bagpipes. So I got this tape for him, and then he had me like bring in a small bottle of scotch one time, and it was just like he couldn't even drink it. He just like touched it to his lips, and he was like happy. So that was good. That's one of the groups, and the other group was a group who, and these came in all kinds. Some of them I understood far more. There was a guy I met there who was 23, I think he was, and dying. And I remember sort of rolling him in a wheelchair to the smoking room, and sitting with him while he rolled a sort of hand-rolled cigarette of drum, and started smoking it. And he said, he woke up one morning with pain in his back, and it bugged him for a couple of days. And he went to the doctor, and it turned out that he had metastatic cancer from a primary lung tumor, and he was that was it. Angry. And this other group were people who, in spite of living in this world and in spite of, going to people's funerals and seeing people die and watching the news all the time and TV shows where people are getting shot and all kinds of stuff blown up, it never really occurred that would happen to me. Like that's the circumstance. And it's easy for us to sit here and find that kind of odd, but the thing that struck me while I was there was that the number of people that actually came into hospice in that position was high. In fact, far higher than the people who came sort of accepting their death. And so you always have to think, at least I always think that, I feel like I'm really okay with the whole mortality thing. But the reality is, I don't know, I don't know. Last summer when I had the whole sort of heart thing going on, and there were some concerns about my heart, I really wasn't okay. It was really stressful. And maybe, I like to think, it was just because I didn't know. And, if it had been like, oh, Eshu, your heart's really bad and you need surgery and all this kind of stuff, I would have been okay, because I know that's what we need to do. And, oh, it's really good. You got a good heart. You're okay. I would have been okay. So, anyways, I watched a lot of people come, and what happens when people come in that position of like, what? I'm going to die? What? Is that you realize that if you're not actively aware or engaged with the transience of your life and of life generally, that you're always putting stuff off. Because there's always later. There's always some other time where you can do that. If you're aware of that circumstance, if you're aware of the transience of life, there's always an impetus to actually get things done, to take care of business, because you don't know. And really, you don't know. I mean, hospice is one thing. Hospice is in a lot of ways, we have one of the best hospice in Canada. And I've been places where hospice is, they don't even know what that is still today. But that's a really, even if it's a terrible situation, even if you're 22 years old and you've got cancer and everything like that, you're being brought into a hospice, that's wonderful. Because death isn't so friendly, it's like you can step out onto the street and bang, you're dead. You can be riding your motorcycle along and a moose steps in front of you and bang, you're dead. There's innumerable, you'd have to be a lot more comfortable for me to list all the ways that death can come. So, but what happens in that particular circumstance is that eventually the reality of the circumstance settles in, and the person often starts getting really serious about the to-do list. And the time is really finite. And so I've seen the families explode, and the person is pulling their hair out because there is an impossible list of things to do. Both positive, I've really got to tell that bastard how I really feel about them, and I've got to sort out the family. These people aren't talking to each other, and I really should have stepped in earlier. And so there's this whole sort of traumatic whirlwind that's going on amidst often really declining physical, mental faculties. And so oftentimes people would reach the end of their lives where there's no more time left, and they're just hanging on with white knuckles. And trying to be a sort of spiritual support in that environment was really painful and difficult, because the person just was not prepared to die. And that was one of the things that really motivated me to go and do more training, to get involved with Zen, to become a priest, was because I was really I don't think I'm personally prepared to be like a spiritual ER doc, because that's essentially what you had to be with those people. It was crisis mode. And you walked in, and it was things could fly at you, and or there would be complete emotional meltdowns, or you'd be walking into the middle of a total family dispute and all that kind of stuff. And I said, I want to be more of a holistic doctor, proactive holistic doctor, where early on when the people are really young, and I can say, you're going to die, and let's start dealing with this right now. And so that's what I hope I've been doing. And so the position that came up in the hospice that I was interviewing for was the coordinator for spiritual care. So in a lot of ways, it's like the head of the ER department, the spiritual ER department. And so there I was back there, and they said, so I told this story, and they said, so do you feel like so why do you want to do this now? And I said, well, I feel like, because they said, why do you want to do this now? Because the truth is, you may have been away for a long time, but the reality is that's still what happens here in hospice. Nothing's changed. And I said, well, one thing has changed. I've changed. And I think that that's really true. This practice can really change us and can really help us. And it's cases like this, if we take them in, what Wu Men's saying in his verse is so important, because each one of those people in hospice, no matter what the circumstance is just a manifestation of my own nature. And it's to even say my own nature is a bit presumptuous. And even when I talk about my own life and all of the different transformations that I make throughout a day or throughout a week or throughout a year, all of those different personages, which one is the real one? Which one of those manifestations in the groups that I've sort of described in hospice, which is the true one, which is the better one, which is the right one? Each of us has to recognize that in each of our transformations, there's nowhere else for us to go. There's nothing else for us to do. We have come complete into that circumstance. And when that circumstance comes to a close, even temporarily, we move. We transform. The whole cosmos transforms and is reborn again. Everything in the cosmos that has led to the moment that we're experiencing right now breaks apart, and we are shot out into the next moment, into the next transformation. But that capacity, I guess you could say, each sort of blossoming and contraction, that capacity, that potential is continuous. It arises from the origin, our true nature, shunyata, emptiness. It arises into every aspect of every environment and every person and every circumstance and every transformation that we see, that we come across, that anybody experiences. And in each moment, moment after moment, there's this expansion and there's a contraction. Each moment, the whole cosmos arises in infinite diversity, and each moment, the whole thing collapses in on itself again to give space so that the next manifestation can arise. And I describe this in a way that's very linear, like it goes arising, dissolving, arising, dissolving, arising, dissolving. But that doesn't even get it, because it's like simultaneously the arising of one is the dissolving of the next. The arising of the next is the dissolving of the next. And this back and forth activity that's happening simultaneously, this is the activity of the cosmos. And so when we get into Wu Men's verse, he's giving this is a beautiful verse. The clouds and the moon are ever the same. Valleys and mountains are each different. All are blessed. All are blessed. It is one. They are two. Yeah, I'm not going to say too much about that. So thank you all, and take this question to heart when you're going through your day, when you're in your relationships, when you're going through your work, when you're at home alone. Deeply reflect upon. Don't just take as a pat answer or try to accept Wu Men's teaching. Deeply reflect on this question: which is the true you? Which is the real you? Thanks for listening to the Living Zen-podcast.
If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.